Unit 5, Part 1. Let's carry on. So differentiation of the various schemes or funds. So let's look at the learning outcomes you are supposed to know for your tests or your exams. So you must be able to explain the limitations on benefit design with reference to the legislation and government healthcare policy. You must be able to differentiate between an unrestricted scheme, also known as an open medical scheme, and a restricted membership medical scheme, which is a closed scheme. The bargaining council fund or exempted medical scheme, and understand the benefit options relevant to medical schemes. Now we're going to look into each one of these learning outcomes in more details in this unit. So when you look at the differentiation of the various schemes or funds, in order to understand what products constitute a medical scheme or fund, one first needs to understand the definition of a medical scheme and what constitutes the business of a medical scheme. So a medical scheme, as per the definition in Chapter 1 of the Medical Schemes Act, means any medical scheme registered under Section 24, subsection 1. The business of a medical scheme, undertaking the liability in return for a premium or a contribution. So they are liable to pay the bills of the hospital and the doctors and the healthcare people in exchange for a premium you are paying. To make provision for a relevant health service to be obtained so that you can get that health service. To grant assistance in defraying expenditure in connection with the relevant health service so that you don't have the expenses to pay out of your pocket, and to render a relevant health service either by the scheme or contracted supply. So they render a health service by the contracted, the hospital or the doctor, which they pay, not you. All right? That's the explanation. So there are two types of medical schemes, namely open and restricted. So when you look at the open scheme, the word open says it's open to everyone. It is a commercial scheme. Anybody can belong to it. It's unrestricted. It's got no restrictions to membership. All right? That is scheme number 1. So it's open, commercial, unrestricted membership. Open, unrestricted to anyone wishing to join a scheme and can afford the premiums. Examples of open schemes are Discovery Health, Medical Scheme, they are the largest, Fed Health, Momentum Health, Bonitas, MediHealth, etc. They are all open, unrestricted, commercial. Commercial is because a lot of companies also make use of them. Companies. And then they'll tell their staff, if you want to, you can join our scheme. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Yes, things like that. Then you look at number 2. Number 2, this is not the open scheme, it's the opposite. The opposite of open is closed. If a door is not open, it is closed. Think of it that way. What is the opposite of unrestricted? Yes, restricted. Opposite of unrestricted is restricted. This one is closed. It is employer-based schemes, restricted to certain categories of employment or former employment for the retirees. The people that used to work for those companies, but they're retired, they can still stay on the scheme. So it's for employees or former employees, those ones that retired, or membership, including a company, a profession, a trade, a industry, calling or trade union, etc. Examples of restricted schemes is GEMS. It is the government medical scheme. It stands for the G, government, E, employee, medical scheme, GEMS. I don't know what CAMF is. BankMed is for all the employees working for all the banks, for Absa, FNB, Nedbank, Standard Bank, Capitec, African Bank, and whatever banks they are. All the people that belongs to all the banks, like me and you, if we don't work for the bank, we cannot belong to BankMed because it's restricted to bank employees only. Medipos is for the post office. I think post office. Their people, only post office employee can belong to that medical scheme. The same, the police, they've got their, I think, POLMED. Yeah, I think it's POLMED. POL stands for police and medical. It's only for the subs, all the police people. It's restricted to them only. They can belong to POLMED and nobody else. All right, so that's a difference between the two medical schemes. Definition from Chapter 1 of Medical Schemes Act for restricted schemes read as follows. Restricted membership scheme means a medical scheme, the rules of which restrict the eligibility for membership by reference to. So now we look at the closed one, the restricted one, for the employees. So number one, employment or a former employer, remember retirees, because if you belong to BankMed and you retire the day from BankMed, they say you can still belong to BankMed because you used to be an employer for them. So it's the employment or former employment or both employment or former employment in a profession, a trade, the industry, or a calling. Two, employment or former employment or both employment or former employment by a particular employer or by an employer included in a particular class of employers. Or three, membership or former membership or both membership or former membership. Basically what they try and tell you that it is the membership or the former membership or both the membership and the former membership, both of them. It can either be the one or the other one or both. Of a particular profession, professional association or union or any other prescribed matter. A third type of fund which falls under the definition of the business of a medical scheme in terms of Section 1 of the Medical Schemes Act 1998 is the bargaining councils. Now, the bargaining councils mostly limit their benefits to primary health care and managed care options and do not cover hospitalization. Members are therefore expected to revert to the public sector for benefit that is not included. They are also exempt from providing the prescribed minimum benefits, the PMBs, to their members. You see, so if you belong to a bargaining council scheme, they've got limits. They limit their benefits to primary health care and managed care options. They do not cover hospitalization. So if you need to go to hospital, sorry, you have to go to a government hospital. They will not pay your PMBs as well. All right, so these schemes are unique in that the individual benefits are negotiated as part of the terms and conditions of the service. So you can tell them, listen, I cannot afford a normal medical scheme. I can only afford R1,000 a month. What can you offer me? And then they will say, all right, for R1,000 a month, you get no hospitalization. So you need to go to a government hospital. We will not pay the prescribed minimum benefits. Then you can say, oh, well, it costs me R150 a month. I will pay that myself. So you and them negotiate. And if you're happy, you join them. If you're not happy, well, then walk away. Um, an example of a bargaining council fund is motor health. So the people in the motor industry, most of them or some of them, they belong to motor health, which is a bargaining council scheme. So this is a third type. So we get the previous two types, the open unrestricted scheme, we get the closed restricted scheme, and then we get the bargaining council scheme. And the word says it in there, you bargain your benefits with the council in that scheme. All right. Movement of employer groups between schemes. So groups of employees may be moved between open schemes for a variety of reasons. The employer and employees may, for an example, be unhappy with the service levels or benefits of a scheme. So Section 29A, subsection 6 provides that a medical scheme may not impose a general or condition-specific waiting period. Remember, we talked about the general and the condition-specific waiting periods before, on a person who applies to be a member of a dependent of a member and who was previously a beneficiary of a medical scheme up until 90 days immediately prior to the date of application, where the transfer of membership is required as a result of. So one of the following results: A. A change of employment, or B. An employer changing or terminating the medical scheme of its employees, in which case such transfer shall occur at the beginning of the financial year, or reasonably notice must have been furnished to the medical scheme to which an application is made for such transfer to occur at the beginning of the financial year. So remember, the changes you can only do from 1 January every year. Otherwise, they must give sufficient notice for the changes to happen on the 1st of January. Employer groups have, in the past, tried to move only active employees to the new scheme, and then they leave the continuation members, particularly the high-risk pensioners, in the previous medical scheme. They were afraid if they move the high-risk pensioners to the new scheme, they will also get all kinds of limitations and waiting periods and stuff like that, or penalties, etc. So the Act has put an end to this practice. Section 29, subsection 1U, provides for the following. It says, if the members of a medical scheme who are members of that medical scheme, by virtue of their employment by a particular employer, terminate their membership of the said medical scheme with the object of obtaining membership of another medical scheme, or of establishing a new medical scheme, such other or new medical scheme shall admit the membership without a waiting period or the imposition of new restriction on account of the state of his or her health, or the health of any of his or her dependents, any member or a dependent of such first mentioned medical scheme who, number one, is a person or persons contemplated in paragraph S, or two, is a person or persons contemplated in paragraph T. And that paragraphs are referred to in the Act. So this means that the scheme from which the employer group is moving can terminate the membership of the continuation members, and the scheme to which the group is moving to must admit them without any waiting periods or new restrictions, you see. So that new rule says they must admit them without any waiting periods or any new restrictions. It also means that continuation members cannot choose to stay with the scheme from which the employer group is moving. So they cannot choose to stay where they are like they used to. They have to move. But they will not get any waiting periods or new restrictions. The new scheme must admit them. So then there's no point to stay where they are. When you look at different benefit options, Section 33 of the Medical Schemes Act provides for the approval, the withdrawal, and the registration of more than one benefit options. So benefit options will only be restricted by the Council of Medical Schemes if the options A are self-supporting in terms of membership and financial performance, or B includes the PMBs, C are financially sound, or D will not jeopardize the financial soundness of an existing benefit option within the medical scheme. The registrar may demand financial guarantees that, in the view of the CMS, will ensure the financial soundness of benefit options. Regulation 4 states that the scheme may provide in its rules that members may only change to another benefit option at the beginning of January each year, as we already know, and by giving written notice at least 3 months before the change. You already know this, we discussed it previously. Many schemes allow members to move to lower cost options during the year, but restrict changes to higher options to the beginning of the year. So during the year, you can, from your current scheme, you can downgrade. Doesn't matter. You cannot upgrade. Upgrade you can only do in the beginning of the year, January. So you have to wait until January before you can upgrade. The model rules for schemes published by the CMS suggest that rules make provision for the Board of Trustees to allow a change at any other time of the year at their discretion. Several schemes give the board or a senior scheme official discretion to allow changes during the year if the member can show a good reason for requesting the change and after their claims have been checked to ensure they are not just trying to make the most of moving benefit options, a practice known as anti-selection. They wanted to anti-select. They want certain options, benefits, and not the others. They cannot. For example, a scheme may allow a downgrade during the year if the member is experiencing financial difficulty. Regulation 9 provides for medical schemes to prorate benefits for members who join schemes during a financial year. For example, if a member joins 6 months into the year, they will only enjoy half of the benefits because they haven't contributed to, since the beginning of the year to get all the full benefits. To ensure survival, medical schemes have to offer employers a range of tailored benefit options that would suit the majority of their employee base. They offer benefit options with different premiums, benefit thresholds, co-payments and or deductibles, hospital benefits, networks, and etc. Some options, and we're going to look at them, are the traditional options, new generation options, pure hospital options, capitated or network options, and hybrid options. So when you look at traditional options pay benefits from an insured pool in line with the benefit schedule for that option. As all the benefits provided are funded from an insured pool, the member cannot carry over unused benefits from one year to the next. Unused benefits fall away at the end of each benefit year. So if you've got, let's say, 2,000 Rand for dentistry every year, you haven't been to the dentist this year, it doesn't mean that you can take this 2,000 Rand and put it with the 2,000 of next year. Now next year you've got 4,000 for the dentist. No. If you haven't used your 2,000 this year, it falls away. Or whatever the benefit is. Traditional options range from very comprehensive and usually expensive to low-cost ones that offer limited benefits. Often the scheme will have an overall annual limit and sub-limits within this. Other schemes have hospital limits and then sub-limits for various categories of non-hospital or day-to-day medical expenses, such as medicines, consultations, or dental benefits. Traditional options may or may not be combined with a savings account. So if a traditional benefit you cannot may or may not be combined with savings account. It all depends. Hospital plans. These options typically only offer cover for major medical or hospital expenses and emergency services such as ambulances. Also, these schemes must provide cover for the treatment and care of 27 common chronic conditions, which mostly involves out-of-hospital benefits. Beyond this, typically, no day-to-day expenses are covered. That must come from your savings account. If you look at new generation options with savings account, these options offer certain insured benefits, usually those covering hospital, major medical expenses, emergencies, and the PMB chronic conditions. Members shall fund other day-to-day benefits by contributing to a medical savings account. Contributions to medical savings accounts that are not utilized during the year can roll over to the next year. These options usually allow members to spend their savings contributions as they wish on any medical expenses, but some schemes limit payments from these accounts or give members the option to limit payments to, for example, the scheme's rates based on the former RPL. Saving, Savings accounts transfer the risk of not having enough to cover claims to the member. The member must manage their expenses to ensure that their funds are enough for the year. Discovery Health popularized savings account options. The intention was to make members responsible for their day-to-day expenses. Typically, members do not abuse their hospital benefits. However, when it comes to medicines, visits to doctors, classes, and so on, members often use more than they need if the scheme is paying. However, when claims are paid from a member's medical savings account, members treat the money in the account as their own and are more careful about how they spend it. An argument in favor of medical savings accounts is that members can control their expenses, choosing the rate at which providers are paid, choosing the setting in which the health service is provided, and the frequency of certain services. More than half of all medical schemes now offer their members savings accounts. Savings accounts are no longer just used on new generation options to self-fund day-to-day benefits. They are also used on other options to top up the limited benefits the scheme offers. Medical savings accounts must comply with regulations under the Act. The intention of Regulation 10, limiting savings contributions to 25% of total contributions, is to avoid depleting the risk pool or cross subsidization within schemes. Allowing members to self-fund a high proportion of their benefits would discriminate against older, sicker members who would need a higher savings level than younger or healthier members. So in September 2011, the CMS issued a circular to schemes stating that as of 1 January 2012, from that date, all schemes would have to ensure that a medical savings account money is in a trust account separate from the scheme's bank account. They must keep it separate. The council also said this meant that the schemes had to accrue all interest or other income earned on the investments in that trust account to the member savings accounts and not recover scheme administration costs from saving account monies. Advance members any money from the medical savings account trust fund. So the money must be kept separate from from the scheme's bank account. Because what happened in the past, they all used it in the one account, and when one certain medical scheme went under liquidation, went bankrupt, the people's savings account, because it was in the bank's account, the people also lost that money. Because the people that did liquidation said, well, all that money is in the scheme's bank account, and how do we know which is where? And they don't have time or effort to go and do auditing and work it out. They just said that money was in the scheme's bank account, and the scheme is bankrupt, and you're going to use that money to settle the scheme's debt, and that was it. And that is why the CMS issued, and they said from 1 January 2012, the savings account money must be kept separate. That's it. So that in case another schemes go down and bankrupt, they cannot take that savings account money and the members losing it again as well. So the Council for Medical Schemes says that the new interpretation of the law will not affect calculations of solvency in terms of Regulation 29 of the Medical Schemes Act, but advised that saving account funds would now have to be invested in line with Regulation 30 of the Act. The draft Medical Schemes Amendment Bill proposes defining medical schemes account as a savings facility owned by the member and held in trust by the scheme for the member. So it's the member's money, it belongs to the member. If the member resigns the medical scheme and they go over to another one, that money, the credit money will be transferred to the new scheme. If the member resigns from the scheme and is not moving over to another scheme, maybe they are immigrating, then they must pay that money out in cash to the member in their bank account. And that money belongs not to the scheme, but to the member. But it is administered by the scheme on behalf of the member. It further states that the savings do not form part of the assets or liabilities of the scheme. Yes, it does not form part of the assets or liabilities, like what happened with the other scheme that went bankrupt. They just said it's part of the assets, it's part of the liabilities of the scheme. Sorry for those people. We are taking that savings account money because it was all in one account to settle the debt of the scheme. And a lot of the members, or all the members, lost whatever they had in their savings account. But luckily, it won't be the same anymore. The CMS noted an increasing trend among schemes to move benefits out of the risk pool and make them payable out of member savings account or annual routine benefits, like self-funded day-to-day benefits that operate like a savings account, except the funds belong to the scheme, and what is not used in a year is lost to the scheme. It, the report says, mainly had the effect of creating a de facto risk-rated contributions for out-of-hospital expenses based on age and health status. And that was a problem. So the registrar said that typically scheme shifts benefits that sick and elderly members are more likely to use out of the risk pool and leave the members to self-fund these benefits through medical savings account. It means the sick and the elderly must choose higher medical savings account contribution levels or pay more out of their own pockets than the young and the healthy. So the medical scheme said out of this pool, they must pay so much money over to the sick and the elderly. So let's move that out to the savings account, and then it's the members' problem. And that is what they are doing. So some large medical scheme administrators have launched credit or debit cards for medical expenses for the benefit of members who want to self-fund their expenses at a higher level than the medical scheme option allows. Credit is extended to members who use an administrator's credit or debit cards for medical expenses, and this credit may be linked to benefits being exhausted on the scheme. However, any payments by members or their employers to these cards are not regarded as medical scheme contributions for tax purposes. And these products are essentially banking ones that are offered to members but operate outside the scheme. So they're totally separate from the scheme. Expenses paid through these products may qualify as tax deductible medical expenses if they exceed the thresholds set in the Income Tax Act. That's the end of part 1 of Unit 5. I'll see you in the next part.